Welcome to the CDG BizCast. I'm your host, Christian Gonzalez, co-owner of Creativity Design Group, a digital marketing firm in Houston, Texas. Welcome to our new subseries, Business Sins. This series will discuss the absolute worst practices businesses engage in, so business leaders will understand why they should never commit these sins themselves when running their own companies. The business sin we will cover today is pricing dishonesty. From deliberate price gouging, failing to acknowledge pricing mistakes, and bait-and-switch schemes, we will discuss how pricing dishonesty can be extremely damaging for your company. We will also look at pricing dishonesty from a consumer standpoint and what consumers should do if they feel they have become victims of pricing dishonesty. Joining me today are CDG BizCast consumer panelists Sarah Russell and Justin Rail. Welcome back to CDG BizCast. It's great to have you guys.
Thank you, Christian. Great to be here.
Great to be back. And I've, as your listeners may know, taken an extended leave of absence, focus on personal matters.
We're glad to have you back on, Justin. It's a pleasure to have you back on the show again. It has been a while. Let's cover some basic information about the legalities surrounding pricing dishonesty. So to start off, in the U.S., there are no laws that require companies to honor an advertised price if that price is wrong. Now, of course, mistakes can happen sometime in the advertising department or the marketing department. Sometimes they may make a typo where a price has been printed wrong on accident. So regardless of that, there are no laws that say that companies are required to advertise that price should it be wrong. There are ways to recover from a mistake like that. However, it is important to remember that there are laws against false and deceptive advertising, and these laws against false and deceptive advertisement first require an intent to deceive the consumer on the part of the advertiser. The laws against false or deceptive advertising first require that there was an intent on the company's part to deceive the consumer. So if a company can demonstrate that an advertised price was simply a mistake, that is not considered false advertising. If the mistake isn't too big, it can be in the company's best interest to honor the advertised price rather than anger many potential customers. That doesn't mean it doesn't come without costs, though. For example, if an item that costs $100 was accidentally misprinted in all the marketing material to be $10, you'll see some serious profit loss right there. However, if it is within a fair value when such an error occurs, then maybe you can still honor the wrong price if it's not too bad, if the price is still within a decent range where your company can still profit from it. When you accidentally print the wrong price when advertising a certain item on sale, you'll first want to demonstrate to the customer that it was indeed a mistake and that you no longer intend to honor that price. Be upfront that it was a mistake. By doing this completely eliminates any problems that you might have with the consumer later. If they try to accuse you of false advertising, then you'll be able to show that you are not engaging in that practice at all and are owning up to your own mistake. Now, when does it become illegal? When does the law come into play? When is it shown that you are indeed trying to break the law with this? Whenever you try to intentionally deceive customers with the wrong price, that is when it becomes a legal matter. The first issue that I want to talk about is bait and switching. What is bait and switching? Bait and switching is when a company intentionally advertises a specific item at a specific price simply to get customers into the store. At that point, the company tries to sell them a different product at a higher price or on terms that are more advantageous to the advertiser, meaning that they bait someone in to buy a certain item and then they'll either try to tell you it's not on sale anymore, or it's no longer in stock, or we have something better that you may want to buy instead of this item. And that item usually ends up being one that's several times more than the product that the customer was initially interested in, the one that was initially advertised. So customers who demand the advertised offer are never told that it's a mistake, but they're never allowed to get the product at that price either. So this is bait and switch. This is illegal right here. This is an example of dishonest advertising. In the end, the store is looking out for themselves. They're trying to bait customers in by advertising a product at a low price, and then when they come in, they tell them that they don't have it, or they refuse to honor that pricing, or they simply try to persuade the customer to buy another product that's better than that one, just so the company can get more money out of it. Like I said, that product that they try to push onto the customer is usually one that costs more and most likely would benefit the store when they make a sale and cause the customer to end up losing because they had to pay more. The law says that anytime you advertise a price, it does become a contract at some point. What what does the contractual side of things say? Assuming that an incorrect advertised price is truly an error rather than an attempt to deceive, companies are only obligated to honor this price if a customer makes an offer at that price and the company accepts it. This exchange creates a contract between the buyer and the seller. So in a store, customers make an offer simply by indicating they want to buy an item. For example, by bringing it up to the register, and the company accepts the offer by ringing up the sale. In the brick and mortar world, contracts don't get formed around pricing errors because the store just won't ring up the sale. Things are a bit different when it comes to online pricing standards. So when an e-commerce website has an incorrect price entered into its database, it can end up not only advertising that price, but also accepting orders and charging customers credit cards for that amount. The central issue here is whether retailers can void the contract created when the orders were accepted. The easiest way for a company to deal with such situations is to have a terms of use section on their website that clearly states what happens in these situations. They can clearly state that the company can cancel orders and refund customers money because of pricing errors or for any reason. Otherwise, a common law doctrine known as the unilateral mistake of fact applies. This doctrine allows a party to a contract to set aside the contract if honoring it would be unconscionable or if the other party could have reasonably assumed it was a mistake. For example, a $1,000 item advertised for $10 would meet this criteria. And again, that would be an example of when a pricing error ends up being extremely costly for the company itself. At that point, selling a $10,000 item at $10 becomes dumping, which simply means selling products at a pricing point that's lower than what it costs for the company to obtain the item. Basically, they make no profit. So, what are the legalities of misprinted advertising? Again, federal law does not penalize company owners over honest mistakes made in advertising, including misprints, although the Federal Trade Commission does monitor complaints to ensure that incidents involving one business are indeed advertent and not repeated regularly. How a company responds to a pricing error in most cases is dictated by state rather than federal rules. Individual states do have their individual rules that govern pricing. In U.S. contract law, it has established that product sellers are not bound to honor an advertised price, for instance, if an error is made by a third-party advertiser and not the seller, such as a newspaper, for example. According to the law firm Wilmer Hale, a case involving an auto dealer established that a newspaper ad that included an incorrect price, though no fault of the advertiser, and did not require a buyer's performance, was only an invitation to make an offer and did not create a binding contract. Now, when it comes to correcting errors, even though a business is not required to honor a misprinted price, it's still important for them to correct the error as soon as possible. For example, in 2013, Macy's put out a national advertisement listing a $1,500 necklace on sale for $47. Ouch! When the correct sale price should have been $479. When they caught the mistake, Macy's put up signs in its jewelry departments and on the store doors alerting customers to the mistake, but unfortunately not before the entire inventory of the necklace was sold out at one of their stores in Dallas. While the store could not get its money back on completed purchases, it was still able to cancel unfulfilled orders that were placed by customers at the incorrect price. Going back to bait and switching, if there are ongoing complaints being reported about one company's pricing, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is going to start looking into whether bait and switch practices are being used. At this point, because there's so many complaints going on, the FTC is now going to start investigating. Again, it is illegal to advertise a product at a certain price if the company has absolutely no intention of selling the item at that price, but is instead trying to bait customers in to sell them something else at a much higher price. The FTC enforces general guidelines for truthfulness in advertising, including claims about price comparisons and whether or not pricing actually constitutes a sale. When it comes to how the law in general applies to this, each state has their own laws governing this matter. Specific pricing issues will most often involve local and state laws, so company owners should contact the Attorney General's office in states where they advertise to determine the specific regulations regarding misprints. In many jurisdictions, companies are legally required to charge no more than the advertised or shelf price of a product, regardless of whether it was a misprint. Honoring published prices or offering some kind of make good on another purchase are some of the ways businesses can maintain customer loyalty after such a mistake, though that decision decision needs to be made by the business if state law doesn't apply, what specifically must be done. And there are truth in advertising laws as well. It is a violation of both federal and state law for any company, including retail businesses, to make false or deceptive claims when advertising products and services. The Federal Trade Commission enforces false advertising laws at the federal level, and similar agencies have jurisdiction at the state level. Retailers may not sell items below their cost with the intent of damaging competitors, raising prices after competitors go out of business. This is known as predatory pricing. Advertising a sale, but only stocking a few items that sell out quickly gets customers into stores where retailers can then try to sell them on more expensive items that are in stock. That also sounds like bait and switching, if you ask me. Each state across the country has consumer protection laws in place to prevent businesses from using misleading marketing campaigns as a means to drive sales numbers. For example, consumers may be able to sue a business that advertises services that the company can't actually perform. Consumers may also be able to sue companies that advertise discounted prices for products and services but refuse to honor the advertised lower sale amounts. The liability risks these lawsuits represent encourages business to act responsibly in using marketing techniques to increase revenue. While it's illegal for businesses to refuse to honor advertised pricing discounts, it's also illegal for companies to deceive consumers into thinking that a discount exists where it actually doesn't. For example, a retail clothing store's promotion of the regular $55 price of a pair of jeans as a $20 discount when the jeans have never been sold for $75 might represent a violation of consumer protection laws. The regular price of merchandise may not be advertised as a sale price. Jewelers are so notorious for offering sale discounts that the FTC had to specify rules regarding the number of weeks a regular price must occur for a percentage sale against it to be advertised, as well as other rules. Consumer protection laws allow consumers that were wronged through deceptive and advertised practices to seek punitive damages from the offending business. A consumer seeking punitive damages may receive higher settlement amount from a business than a lawsuit through which the consumer may recoup only actual losses. Punitive damages in the case of false or misleading advertising are penalties assessed by the court to punish the company's illegal behavior and discourage other businesses from attempting similar practices. So those are just some general guidelines, just some general information about how the law is enforced when it comes to misprinted pricing or deceptive advertising. So now I want to ask y'all both this question. Have you ever been in a situation where a store tried to lie about their pricing in any way, either when you tried to buy something they advertised or when an employee tried to sell you something directly when you were at their store, at their place of business?
It's actually interesting you should bring this up because here's another type of what I would call pricing issue that is along the same lines, where if you were to get, for example, potato salad at the grocery store, two of the, for example, 16-ounce containers would be $11.59, but if you get a 32-ounce container, it would be only $9.89, but they claim it's on sale for $11. They get you on the sale on the two smaller items, trying to trick you into thinking that the two that are on sale at the smaller size is a better deal than the larger item. So sometimes you can even dispute the unit price of the item that's on sale. Sometimes stores will do that, trying to move older inventory.
And that in itself is extremely unethical. In my opinion, there needs to be laws governing that as well, because I know that stores, especially those with perishable goods, will try to use methods like this to clear out older inventory so they don't have to throw it away after it hits its expiration date. But in the end, the consumer is the one who ends up getting the raw end of the deal in that matter, because now they are purchasing a product that is probably either at its expiration date or past it, and they are at risk of getting food poisoning. And there are consumer laws against this as well, too. Even though most of these consumer laws, I'm assuming, only apply to products that are past their expiration date, there should also be some regulation saying that once a product is getting closer to their expiration date, businesses should not try to play with the price in order to get them to sell like that. To me, that is just immoral and unethical.
I agree.
Me too.
It's something that I find to be really angering because, especially if you're on a more limited budget, or in some cases, food allergies, which are unfortunately becoming more prominent in this day and age. If you have to watch your budgeting that close, if you don't pay attention, you will get ripped off.
I agree. The most important thing for consumers to do is to be vigilant whenever they are looking at pricing, and that is with anything, not just with products and consumer goods, but also with services. And we're going to end up doing a whole different episode later on about how consumers should be vigilant when it comes to looking for a contractor to work on their home or something similar like that. Justin, did you ever experience this personally when you went into a store and they were trying to utilize this deceptive type of pricing?
I have. That's why I mentioned it. And this is something that, even though I can understand the business side of things, trying to clear out extra or somewhat older inventory, especially for perishable goods like potato deli salad or whatever at grocery stores. And I consider that to be somewhat unethical, because if you really look at the unit price, it really shouldn't vary that much.
I agree, because when it comes to lowering the price, especially for items like this, you do have to keep profitability in mind. Potato salad, the stores need to keep in mind, how much does it cost to make one tub of potato salad? They have to keep labor costs in mind, ingredients in mind, logistical costs in mind. If they are obtaining it from a third-party source, sometimes they make it in store in their delis. And they also need to keep in mind packaging costs as well, too. There's a lot of different costs that come into play when it comes to manufacturing a product. And when it comes to trying to lower the price per unit just to land a sale, make sure it is within a fair range. Like I said, in the example you described, Justin, this is not in a fair range. In the end, the consumer is getting screwed, because when they partake of that lower price, they end up losing more money, or they end up spending the same amount. Consumers don't really pay attention to the unit prices, and a lot of stores, unfortunately, do not advertise the unit price on the labels that they have. I know Walmart does. In general, consumers are not fully aware of this.
I also find that it's not just the unit price you have to pay attention to, especially if you have a food allergy. It can take you that much longer to shop, because you not only have to compare unit price on the sizes based on not only that, but how much you'll actually go through of the item itself. And so sometimes, even though the smaller item is the higher price, sometimes you have to bite the bullet if you're not going to go through the whole larger container. And that, I think, is unfair as well, if you really think about it.
I wholeheartedly agree. Consumers should be offered more options than just whatever's on the shelf. They should have an economy size, they should have a party size, and then they should have sort of a middle range size. And then between economy size and middle range, kind of like an intermediary size between there, which is not as large as a middle range size, but not as small as a budget size either. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, because having a food allergy myself, I have to often take extra time to read every single label of every single grocery item I want to buy to make sure that it is something I'd actually be able to eat.
Yes, that's correct. And when it comes to food allergy, the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, requires that certain allergens be listed on their labeling to make consumers just like you aware of their potential harm, because you know what your allergies are, and manufacturers by law are supposed to be upfront that certain harmful allergens are in their products. The FDA requires it. Now, Sarah, please share with us any experiences that you have had where a store that you've went to has engaged in some sort of pricing dishonesty, whether it was in their advertising or an employee tried to deceive you while you were at their place of business.
Yeah, I needed to purchase some headphones one time, so I went to our local electrical store. I'd seen online that they were on offer, reduced from $49.99 to $10.99, I think it was. I thought, well, that's got to be a bargain. And they said they had loads and loads from in stock. Anyway, I get to the electrical dealer and I've gone in, and then I've gone walking around the store because it's so big, and then suddenly I found them. I'm like, oh yeah, there they are. Looked, seen them, spoke to the colleague, and they said, oh, can I help? He's like, oh, I need a pair of these, please. Oh yeah, they're selling really fast, you know. Yeah, they're a good seller at the moment. So I said, you know, yeah, I'll have some of them, because they was all kept out the back. So they've gone out the back to get them. A little while later, they've come back and said, oh, here we are. We haven't got many left. So I said, oh, brilliant. Great. So anyway, so I've gone to the checkout and I've stood in the line waiting. There's a few people who've got these headphones, and I heard a bit of a kerfuffle at the front, and I thought, oh, someone was just having a little argument. Didn't really take any notice, so I'm just waiting patiently in the queue. And they've gone off, these people, and it's got to my turn, and they've rung it up in the till, and they've gone, oh, yes, that's $39.99. I said, no, it's not. I said, it's advertised online, both online and on the price shelf, the price that I'm going to pay, which is $10.99. No, I'm sorry, it's going through the till at that price. I said, no. I said, you're advertising in two places, both online and in the store at a rather reduced price. It's your fault that it's not going through at the right price. You're advertising it at a price. Oh, well, you can't have it. I said, well, what do you mean I can't have it? Oh, we can't sell them now. We're going to withdraw them from sale. I said, you can't withdraw them from sale. I'm actually standing here in front of you, willing to buy it. Anyway, the manager come out. Because I work in retail myself, I know exactly what's what. You do it as a gesture of goodwill. It's usually what you do to keep the customer happy. Otherwise, I'm going to go away and tell all my friends not to go back. Anyway, so the manager's come out. And he said, I'm so sorry. He said, there's been such a mix-up with these headphones today. He said, so many people have wanted them, etc. He said, as a one-off, he said, I'm willing to let you have them at that price. I said, well, I think you'll find that you're going to have loads of other people with the same problem behind me. So I said, if I was you, I would do something about it. Take your prices offline and take your prices off the shelf, change them, take the stuff away, because you're going to have loads and loads of issues with them. So he said, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that. He's a manager. Why the hell hadn't he thought of that? Anyway, so I got my headphones at $10.99 instead of $39.99, so 40 quid, which I was quite happy with, which was great. So that was one time. Another time, I wanted to buy a curtain pole. So I went to the store with a curtain pole. I didn't see anything online this time, so I just went into the store. Just randomly thought, oh, let's see what they've got. So I've had a wander around the store, and it's like, oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's the size I want. Want it a bit telescopic. Yep, that fit great where I want it. Anyway, and it was priced up as a discount of half price on the shelf, and it had it in what it was and what it is now on the shelf. So I'm like, oh, great, fantastic. So I've grabbed it, gone to the checkout, and I'm queuing up in the line. Then I get to the checkout and they scan it and they go, oh, that'll be $49.99. I said, oh, no, it's not. I said, it's half price down there on the shelf. No, it's not. Yes, it is. It's on the shelf at that price. You must have been looking at the wrong thing. No, I haven't been looking at the wrong thing. It's on the shelf. So I had to physically go with those people, one of the colleagues from the shop floor, and show them exactly where I got it from and picked it up. They took the label out of the shelf and they went to the checkout and said, we're withdrawing them from sale. So I went, what? I said, so you've just taken that out of the thing. I've told you that you've made a mistake with the price. That's something you've missed. Not me, something you've missed. You should check that. And you're telling me that I now can't have that, although I'm now at the checkout. So they said, no, we're withdrawing them from sale. There's nothing we're going to do about it. Well, that was the last time I visited that store. There wasn't anything they was going to do about it. So I just walked out, and since then, never, ever been back. And I would never go back.
Wow. I have never heard of anything like that happening before, ever. So because you called them out on their pricing mistake, they realized that because they were going to have to sell them at the lower price, they had to pull them off from sale, because since they honored the correct price with you, now they were stuck between either having to honor that price with everybody else or just quit selling them altogether. I've never heard of that before. That is a major change. It's a good thing you went into the store that day, because somebody needed to set them straight on what was going on. Otherwise, they were just going to continue to get more angry customers, because the next person who tries to buy a pair of those headphones was going to be extremely angry when they see that the sale price was not ringing up.
Exactly.
It is important to understand how the law works in the United Kingdom regarding this. The United Kingdom, based on my research, has laws that are really similar to United States consumer laws. There are two statutory provisions that were passed in the United Kingdom, one that was rather recent and one that dates back to decades ago. These two statutory provisions are the Misrepresentation Act of 1967. This is the one from decades ago. This act provides a statutory remedy for misrepresentation, allowing consumers to seek rescission or cancellation of the contract or damages. And then there was this provision, which was more recent, the Consumer Rights Act of 2015. This act strengthens consumer protection by introducing the concept of unfair terms, which include misleading or deceptive terms in consumer contracts. Let's talk about 3 methods of misrepresentation to help our listeners get a better understanding of how they can be misrepresented, because this information I'm about to tell you here applies to both the US and the UK. So the first type of misrepresentation is fraudulent misrepresentation. This occurs when a trader intentionally makes false statements with the knowledge that they are untrue and with the intent to deceive the customer. So basically, to sum it all up, the trader or the store is trying to scam their customers. They're making lies about the products and services just to land a sale. Then there's negligent misrepresentation. Now this arises when a trader makes false statements without taking reasonable care to ensure their accuracy, resulting in the consumer being misled. That sounds a lot like what you dealt with the headphones, Sarah. And then there's innocent misrepresentation. This occurs when a trader makes false statements without realizing their falsity, but the consumer is still misled. So that would be more on par with the example I told you about earlier with Macy's selling that expensive necklace. In your case, Sarah, I said it was negligent misrepresentation, but do you know for a fact if the pricing error occurred because of a mistake on their part, or was it intentional? Do you know?
I think it was a mistake on their part. Within this country, you have a lot of people, you probably do in the US, that go round in these stores and they do the price check. Usually price changes in the morning before the store opens. I'm guessing that was missed out. There was a whole batch of prices that were missed out that went up on the system, the mainframe, and in the store, but not on the shop floor physically, so that when they rung up on the till, they were the higher price, whereas on the shop floor, they were still showing the lower price. So they just forgot to remove them. So I don't think they were intentionally going to do it, but the people with the curtain pole, they just didn't have no customer service, sort of like loyalty at all. It's like, we don't care that it's gone through the wrong price. You're not having it at the cheaper price, so we're just going to take them off the shop floor. So you can't buy them and no one can buy them. So they lost out at the end of the day. As I say, I never went back again. But the headphone thing was rather bad for electronics. You know, again, that was quite a major mistake, obviously online and also in the store, because they come from, that's 2 different areas. Like you've got the PR team who deal with online pricing and stuff. And then in the store, you've got the people again who should go around and change prices if they've gone up. But there was so many of them and they was offering it. So why then weren't they, you know, sort of saying, oh yeah, well, we've made a mistake, but people can have them at this price, you know. Luckily I did, because I complained. I got them at that price, but I don't know how many other people complained and whether they got them at a lower price. I wouldn't know, but it was still bad. I'm not sure if it was intentional, but again, it was bad.
When pricing in the end turns into a contractual agreement, it's important to remember a few English common law principles. So one of them would be a mistake of fact. In certain cases, misrepresentation can lead to a mistake of fact, which automatically invalidates a contract and enables the consumer to seek its cancellation. So the only thing is that they canceled it instead of you. You're the consumer, but they were the ones who canceled it because they decided to cancel it by withdrawing this product from sale. Every other customer who wanted to buy this product was basically saved from getting ripped off at the register. They don't want to be billed a much higher price when it was advertised as a lower price. Secondly, misrepresentation is also a tort as well, which allows consumers to seek damages from their losses they have suffered as a result of a trader's misleading statements. They can sue them. Some red flags to look out for to help consumers identify misrepresentation would be, for one, look out for exaggerated claims and false promises. Traders can employ exaggerated claims or false promises about the products or services to entice customers. Again, that is just simply bait and switching. Omission of material information. So failure to disclose important information such as potential risks or limitations of the product or service can also constitute misrepresentation. A good example would be what I said about the US and the FDA when they don't identify certain harmful allergens on the labeling of certain food products. Misleading visuals and advertisements. So deceptive images, videos, or advertisements that misrepresent the actual product or service can be considered misrepresentation. We gave an example of this several episodes ago. Whenever people use AI to make fake visuals in order to advertise certain products or services. We all remember the Willy Wonka experience back in Scotland. And then, of course, there's high-pressure sales tactics. Employing undue pressure or creating a sense of urgency to push consumers into making a quick quick decision can mask misrepresentation. So high pressure sales tactics. I'm not a big fan of these. We did an episode a while back that was called Salespeople Stop Being Rude to Your Customers. In that episode, we talk all about high pressure sales tactics. High pressure sales tactics, no matter how friendly the salesperson may be, should always be taken as a red flag, and you should always be careful. Now we're going to shift topics here. Let's talk about price gouging and how the law handles it. First, let's talk about what is price gouging. So whenever acute shortages of a product disrupts normal competitive pricing processes, price gouging starts to occur. If there's not enough of a product to go around, for example, like toilet paper, hand sanitizer, or face masks, as we saw during the COVID pandemic, then would-be competitors have nothing to sell and cannot offer better deals. So in such cases, stores that do have a stock of these scarce goods have the ability to raise prices to maximize their own profits, which unfortunately harms the consumer. This is price gouging. Whenever the prices of certain essential goods and services go up simply because there's an emergency and businesses simply want to profit off of it. This also happens whenever there's natural disasters like hurricanes and tornadoes and earthquakes. Hurricane Beryl just went through the Houston area last month, and while I did not pay close attention to what was going on at the time, chances are certain businesses were engaging in price gouging. For example, this is extremely common with convenience stores. You don't really see it with major chains because they know they don't want to get in any legal trouble, but smaller businesses, unfortunately, like convenience stores, do like to engage in this illegal method because they're assuming that because they're not big, the law is not going to find them. Convenience stores may try to increase prices on bottled water, for example, or canned goods. This is not something that any business should engage. Federal law doesn't prohibit price gouging, but that does not mean that it's not illegal. Many states forbid it at the bare minimum to essential supplies during a declared state of emergency. Now, raising a price of one non-essential item during a non-emergency is technically not illegal. For example, if you want to raise the price on a TV that you have for sale from $500 to $600, that's not illegal. It's a non-essential item. It's a non-essential item during an emergency or not. So raising a price on a good like this is not illegal. But let's say that one of the unfortunate natural disasters happened, and now people are scrambling to get supplies. People are looking to buy bottled water. They're looking to buy canned goods, maybe even a generator, anything that they know that they could benefit from during this time where there's a shortage. Raising the prices on these items is illegal at the state level. Unfortunately, there's no federal law that prohibits this, but each state has its own laws governing price gouging. Just like as I mentioned with pricing in general, price gouging is one of those things that the state laws govern. It's important to remember that as a consumer, you have to be vigilant and do price comparison. If you see that a store is charging $10 for a can of chili, for example, because canned goods are an essential item that people want to get during a shortage because they're non-perishable items, stores are probably going to try to get sneaky. If you happen to see that something that outrageous is going on, now you have a case that you can report price gouging. Many states often have, during times of emergency, a hotline that you can call to report price gouging. And if they do not, you can simply contact your state's attorney general's office. Many states do forbid price gouging. So if you happen to notice it after a hurricane or a tornado has gone through your area and you're starting to see that stores are selling essential items at ridiculous prices, you can report this to your attorney general's office. If they have established a hotline for you to call to report it anonymously, you can also do that as well. States have always had price gouging laws on the books for many decades. They've always been invoked during natural disasters to fight these types of price hikes, such as gas gouging after hurricanes happen, because gas is often hard to find after a hurricane hits. There are penalties for illegal price gouging, and again, they vary widely from state to state. They can range from moderate to severe fines all the way up to prison time, and it can also open up doors for sellers to sue stores who are engaging in price gouging, civil lawsuits. States do define it in different ways. Some define it as charging an unconscionable, exorbitant, or excessive price for certain products as compared to a price before the state of emergency, the normal price. Those standards would certainly appear to be met in recently reported instances of people hoarding bottles of hand sanitizer purchased for a couple of dollars and then reselling them for $70 each in wake of the shortages challenges created by the COVID pandemic. Aside from dramatic examples, it will never be truly clear when a price increase could be found sufficient enough to be defined as price gouging under these states' laws. Other states do have more specific definitions for price gouging. For example, a number of states define price gouging as raising prices on essential goods by just over 10% of their pre-emergency price. In those states, a convenience store owner who raises the price of a gallon of milk from $3.50 to $3.85, which is a mere 35 cents, could potentially be liable for price gouging. That's not very much, but in the eyes of these states, that's still price gouging. And in several other states, they have laws that say that any increase in a price of a certain product after a certain emergency is declared can be considered price gouging, unless it's justified by other market conditions. Consumer complaints of price gouging have been pouring into state regulators in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, and several state attorney generals have indicated they are stepping up enforcement efforts. As a result, businesses selling goods subject to their state's price gouging restrictions must take special care to understand the governing rules and set prices within their bounds. While one would expect states to focus their criminal enforcement efforts on the more severe cases, the fact that a wide range of conduct could legally be deemed price gouging and prompt, at a minimum, cease and desist letters from state authorities. So, state regulators are having a much more watchful eye on price gouging ever since COVID happened, and should another major emergency like that happen, there's most likely going to be more severe penalties. In the United Kingdom, things are a little bit different because the laws and regulators there don't even use the phrase price gouging in any of their consumer protection regulations. However, you can see that they do have many regulations and laws that are similar to those here in the US. Chapter 2 of the UK Competition Act of 1998 prohibits businesses within market dominance from engaging in abusive conduct, including unfair pricing. Sarah, I am going to ask you in just a little bit more about price gouging, but first, Justin, I would like to ask you first, have you ever faced price gouging before? What happened and how did you handle it?
I have faced price gouging before, and not in the way you think, because cars are always going to be overpriced. The sticker shock that most people get when they look at the price of a car is because to car manufacturers, those things are deliberately priced more than what they're actually worth. And that's been true across the board for longer than I've been alive. And so sometimes you'll end up paying $30,000 or $40,000 for a $15,000 car when you factor in the interest rate on your loan for the car. And that's something that, because of pricing transparency laws, people often don't realize when they don't fully do the math for how long they're going to own the car versus how long they'll be paying for the car. I had to deal with that from dishonest car dealers.
Unfortunately, car dealers are not notorious for being honest, and many car salesmen need to listen to the episode I mentioned earlier about where they need to learn how to stop being rude to their customers. Just because somebody is observing your product does not mean that they're exactly interested in buying it. Car dealers are known for trying to pressure people into buying a car that they cannot afford. That's not right. That's not exactly the same thing as price gouging during an emergency, but it is definitely something that consumers need to be vigilant about. As I mentioned earlier, high-pressure sales tactics are a major red flag, and in your case, Justin, you were able to see how if you were to purchase this car, you would end up losing out big. You factored in other costs as well. It's not just the sale price. You're right. There's also other costs involved to purchasing a new car too, like insurance.
Never mind the gas, oil changes, tires, and periodic maintenance involved in the price as well. If you can't account for all of that in your budget, then that is a car you cannot afford.
That is true. And even if you do buy a car on credit, then you still have to make the monthly payments or risk it getting repossessed. And many people learn that just because they get a lower monthly payment on this car to own it, they assume that they can afford it every month. Sometimes they realize that that's not always the case. So if you cannot afford your monthly payment, that also tells you that it's a car you can't afford.
That's why for a lot of years, my tires were my own 2 feet and a good pair of walking shoes.
That's a very smart thing to do because you don't have to walk very far to get to where you need to go. And so why spend the extra money on car maintenance and gas and oil changes or insurance? You know, insurance to me is the most burdensome of car payments, but that's beside the point. You're smart and you know exactly how to handle that.
And even though I do have a car, I made sure to sit down with the sales agent that I had selected for, and I made sure to do my research to make sure I was dealing with an honest salesman before I inked the deal.
Now, Sarah, I would like to ask you the same question as well. I know price gouging is not a term used in the UK very much, but have you ever faced price gouging before? And what happened and how did you handle it?
Okay, yeah, as you said, we don't use price gouging as such. They have many other terms for other things, like we have predatory pricing, it's called, which predatory pricing occurs when a firm sells a good or service at a price below cost or very cheaply, with the intention of forcing rival firms out of business. If predatory pricing leads to an increase in monopoly power, then it will harm the public interest because it leads to higher prices in the long term. However, predatory pricing could be confused with a very competitive market. Consumers can benefit if prices fall and all the firms stay in business. Although predatory pricing in the UK is illegal, it is prohibited under the EU competition law to sell goods at a loss with the purpose of forcing other firms out of business. Me personally, I've never had anything like that. I've just had, obviously, the things that I've said about before with the mispricing, but not price gouging as such. But it's not something I think that is a big thing here in the UK. I think it's more controlled, so that doesn't happen.
In my opinion, they may not use the term price gouging as much as they do here in stateside, but the way you described it would fit the bill for the definition as far as I'm concerned on that, because predatory pricing with the intent to underprice your competitors to a point where they cannot afford to sell it at the same price you're selling it for is, in my opinion, the bread and butter of what we're talking about here as far as price gouging, either too high or too little, either trying to make a profit unnecessarily off of the consumer by forcing them to overpay or by underpricing your competitor so that your competitor goes out of business.
Well, that is predatory pricing, as I said, which is illegal in the UK. You can go to prison for it and have a very large fine for doing that. So it's more monitored, and I think they're more on top of it here. So, I mean, I could be wrong. There could be areas where it's happening, but it is illegal as such.
And rightfully so. It should be illegal. We also talked about predatory pricing when we started the episode as well. It should be illegal. That is not right. If you're purposely trying to put your competitor out of business, that's just plain evil in my eyes. Now, I would like to talk about consumer rights. What rights do consumers have when misrepresentation occurs? So, for one thing, in your case, Sarah, being in the United Kingdom, you can assert your rights under the Misrepresentation Act of 1967. You can inform the trader about the misrepresentation and demand rescission of the contract or compensation. You can seek action under the Consumer Rights Act of 2015, challenge any unfair terms in the contract, including misleading and deceptive statements, and you can initiate legal proceedings. So if direct communication with the trader fails, you can consider legal action to seek damages or rescission of the contract. And then you can also contact your local trading office as well to report any misconduct you see being done by a store or any trader in general. In the U.S., each state has their own attorney general's office. Anytime you see some sort of unfair trading practice, you can always report them to your attorney general's office. Now, it's also important to know how to address unfairness and misrepresentation. So, if you've ever been misled into entering a contract based on false or misleading statements, you have the legal recourse to seek redress for the harm caused by the misrepresentation. Depending on the type of misrepresentation and the severity of the impact, that's decided by the courts, you might be entitled to certain remedies. For example, rescission, which I just mentioned. If misrepresentation has fundamentally undermined the basis of the contract, you may have the right to rescind or cancel the contract. This means that the contract is rendered void and you are entitled to a full refund or any payments made. So, for example, let's say that you try to buy something and the offer is made at the register. Remember, the contract is considered to be formed the moment you take the item to the cash register to pay for it. So, let's say you buy it and then you see that the price that it was honored at originally is ringing up different at the register. At that point, you can cancel your sale. You can cancel the contract by canceling the sale, and you don't have to buy it. If you've already paid for it and you decide that you no longer want the item because you paid more than you expected to pay for it, then you can simply return it to the store for a refund, and then at that point, they have to refund you. Once the sale is closed, it is considered a contractual obligation, and of course, the stores have policies in place that they have to follow because those are part of the contract as well. Now, there's also damages. If a misrepresentation misrepresentation happened that caused you a major financial loss or other damages, you can seek compensation from the party responsible for the misrepresentation. This could include reimbursement for expenses incurred, loss of profits, or other quantifiable losses. Again, you have to be able to prove that you suffered damages in court before you're entitled to anything. If you don't have some sort of tangible proof to show that you faced damages and suffered monetary loss, then the courts are simply going to say, that they don't exist if you can't prove it otherwise. And then there's rectification. If the misrepresentation can be rectified without canceling the contract, then the court may order the party responsible to take steps to correct the misrepresentation. This could involve providing accurate information, repairing defects in the product or service, or otherwise addressing the source of the misrepresentation. So this could help the business owner. If the business owner is honest to own up to the mistake and repair the product or service, this is less about pricing and more about simply obtaining a product or service, obtaining a product that was defective or a service that wasn't fully completed, then instead of ordering the trader or service provider to refund the customer, the court can order them to simply fulfill the parts of the contract that they did not fulfill initially. Those are just a few tips to help consumers. A lot of this information is applicable for both the US and the UK. Y'all both seem like extremely vigilant people. I'd like to close out this episode by simply letting the consumers know this. Remember, as a consumer, you have the right to know everything about the pricing. You have the right to know exactly what you're buying, the ins and outs of what you're purchasing. Always make sure that whenever you're looking at the pricing, check out the unit price very closely. And if they are offering a certain discount, is the discount they're offering a real deal or not? Is it truly a steal? Is it something that you can truly benefit from? Or in the end, are you getting ripped off?
And my request to salespeople, don't rip off your customers if you want long-term loyalty to your brand.
As you know, we're all about educating small business owners at CDG BizCast, and the business sin of pricing dishonesty is one that you need to avoid at all costs. Do not engage in unnecessary price hikes. Do not use high-pressure sales tactics to get your customers to buy something that they don't want. Don't lie in any of your advertising about anything, period. It's not just about price gouging or bait and switching. No, don't engage in bait and switching. Don't try to bait your customers in by making them think that they're coming in for something that you don't even have or have no intention of selling to them. But in general, don't engage in dishonest advertising. The easiest way to go out of business and to destroy your company's image is to lie just to get people to come in the door. And if you deal with salespeople, or if you're a salesperson who's listening to this, the worst thing you could do to your customers is lie in any way just to land a sale, whether it's about pricing or product features or anything along those lines. Any form of dishonesty, in my eyes, is a major business sin. Don't do it. Don't even try it. If you're going to lie just to try to land sales, you deserve to go out of business. United States consumers, each individual state has an attorney general's office. You can always report any form of illegal activity, especially if it involves illegal pricing or dishonesty in general, and they will investigate. Simply look up online the phone number or contact information for your state's attorney general's office. If you've ever suffered any form of damages, you can always consider suing in a small claims court otherwise. In the United Kingdom, you have the same options as well. You can always sue a vendor in small claims court if you feel if it has gotten to that extreme. But at the bare minimum, you can always report to the local trading standards office in your area. Consumers, be vigilant about pricing. Business owners, always bring your A game. Always remember that honesty is the best policy. Don't rip off your customers. Don't scam them. Don't lie in any form. If you're going to engage in any form of dishonest practices, you deserve to be investigated by all the government entities. You deserve to go out of business. And business owners who are out there trying to rip off your customers intentionally, you deserve jail time. You deserve to be put in jail for a nice long time. And those are my final words on the matter. Do you guys have a final remark that you would like to make as we close out?
That about covers it, in my opinion.
Yeah, just what you said. Consumers being super vigilant. Stand by what you see. If you see the price on the shelf is what you believe is what it's supposed to be, and then you get to the checkout and it's something totally different, stand your ground. You could find that the store is actually in your favor and they do want you to go back again. You could get it for the price that's on the shelf, but it's not guaranteed they will, and they could withdraw it from sale, so you can't actually have that product, even though it's advertised, and it's not against the law to do that. Not in the UK anyway, and I'm not sure it is in the US. I think we was talking about that, so it's roughly the same. So yeah, and also stores, keep up with your prices. and then that wouldn't happen. And that's my final words.
Very well said. Yes. Always make sure that whenever you are involved in the marketing process, make sure that there are no mistakes. Your advertisements that you push out to the public online or in print are triple checked for accuracy. And that is especially true with pricing. Consumers, be as vigilant as you possibly can be, and always make sure to voice your concerns whenever you feel a business has ripped you off. Business owners, always make sure that you take extreme caution whenever you are practicing marketing. Make sure everything is accurate, that the consumers will be more than happy with what you provide to them. Do not allow one typo to open up a huge can of worms for your entire company, especially if you operate nationwide and have multiple locations. Thanks again for listening to the CDG BizCast. Thank you, Sarah and Justin, for coming on our show today. Y'all have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for having us on, Christian.
Thanks for having me.
We look forward to having y'all again on future episodes of BizCast. Stay vigilant, consumers. Businesses, stay honest. Have a great day, everyone.